Alrighty, guys, we're not going to be doing this for a long while because Fantastic Four First Steps is now in theaters. I have seen it. I hope you guys have had a chance to see it, but maybe you're checking out this review to see if you should see it. And if you are, welcome to the Access Blockbusters YouTube channel and podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. But like I said, we're not going to be doing this for quite a while because Fantastic Four First Steps is the last MCU movie for a year. And so this movie, for better and or for worse, is going to be the last taste of the MCU on the big screen until Spider-Man Brand New Day in July of 2026 and then Avengers Doomsday in December of 2026. But we're here to talk about Fantastic Four First Steps. Now, this is going to be a non-spoiler and spoiler review, so we're going to be talking non-spoilers first, and then I will clearly delineate when the spoilers are beginning. So if you haven't seen the film, no worries, you will know exactly when to save the video to watch later, save the segment to watch later, and then come back once you have seen the film. Let's dive into Fantastic Four First Steps. This was a film that I was quite excited about. This was a film, it's directed by Matt Shakman. And Matt Shakman, for those of you who don't know, is the director of all the episodes of WandaVision. And WandaVision is my second favorite Marvel movie or show ever. I love WandaVision. And the direction is no small part of that. The way that Matt Shakman was able to shape that world and really take hold of that sitcom setup and make it unique, make it feel authentic, but make it fit into the MCU is next to none. And the trailers, to be quite honest with you guys, haven't been the most amazing things in my opinion. Now, I also really like them. I do like them and enjoy them. But to me, the trailers they didn't captivate me the same way that even, I'm not going to lie, the Captain America Brave New World trailers did. And, I mean, the trailers are not always an indication of how good or bad a movie is, but, you know, there's still an essence of the movie within those trailers. So I went into Fantastic Four First Steps thinking, I hope to really like this movie. I think I will. I just don't know on the scale of maybe, yeah, it's pretty good to, oh my gosh, it's amazing. I don't know where it's going to be. And you guys probably, if you've clicked on this review, have read the title of this. I'm going to say this. And I sat there at the end of the movie, as soon as the movie finished. I sat there and I thought about it. As the credits were rolling, and after the first post-credit scene, and then into the, because there were two post-credit scenes. I'm obviously not going to talk about what they are in the non-spoiler section, but after the first post-credit scene, I was just sitting there for a while, for a few minutes as the credits rolled. And I thought, there's no way. There's absolutely no way. And granted, I admit this, every time I add a movie to my MCU rankings, it usually drops a few spots, a couple spots after the first time I see it, because I usually put the movie on the ranking immediately afterwards, and yeah, I mean, you're kind of riding the high, so Fantastic Four First Steps might drop a little bit. As of the recording of this segment, as of the recording of this video, the Fantastic Four First Steps is in the top 5 of my MCU rankings. Fantastic Four First Steps, to me, and there are many reasons why. We're going to talk about those reasons for me. It may not be top 5 for you, but for me, Fantastic Four First Steps is a top 5 MCU movie or show. And again, I reserve the right to change my mind. You know, in a week, it might be in the top 10, and in another week, it might be in the top 15. I love this movie. I adore this movie. It makes, and this is no shade to Thunderbolts at all, because I really like Thunderbolts. I really do like Thunderbolts. It makes Thunderbolts look like a mid-tier Marvel movie. And it's not. I think in the grand scheme of everything Marvel, including phases 1 through 3, Fantastic Four First Steps is that upper tier echelon, S-tier kind of movie. And Thunderbolts is a really solid A-tier movie to me. But Fantastic Four First Steps, my goodness. I love this movie. So let's talk about this film. And again, no spoilers, nothing that you haven't seen in the trailers, nothing that you know, that you don't know, that's in the main trailers at least, that we're not going to talk about in this movie. Or in this review. So, first of all, the cast. If you guys remember, for the first year or so after this movie was announced, there were casting rumors everywhere. Reed Richards. There was one fan cast. People were so convinced it was going to be, what was it? Was it Josh Gad at one point? No, not Josh Gad, but there was something. Someone was going to be Thing, and then there was Adam Driver was going to be Reed Richards, and Jodie Comer was going to be Sue Storm, and then it was going to be John Krasinski, of course, and Emily Blunt. There were just rumors everywhere. I cannot imagine a different cast for this movie. For the most part. We'll talk about some of the other cast members. In particular, Reed Richards and Sue Storm. I cannot imagine anybody other than Pedro Pascal and Vanessa Kirby. They embody these very specific versions of these characters. Because I'm sure that John Krasinski played the version of Reed Richards that was written for him in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. But for the versions that were written for Fantastic Four First Steps, Pedro Pascal has to play very cerebral. I believe him, right? Because every movie and show in the MCU tries to tell you that every one of those characters is the smartest person on earth, Reed Richards is the smartest person ever in the MCU. I believe that. He is the single smartest person in the entire MCU. He might even put Tony Stark to shame. Vanessa Kirby Sue Storm has to carry the most in this movie, I believe, in terms of not just acting, but emotion, and not just emotion, but leadership, and she does it so well. She has to carry really the brunt of what this movie is about, and she does it so well. I'm so excited to see her again, because the way that she, as a character, is both steadfast, but also very human and very raw at the same time, is amazing. Now, Ben Grimm and Johnny Storm, I will admit, Joseph Quinn and Evan Moss-Bachrach are both amazing actors. I will say, in terms of their characters, I don't think they got nearly as much to do as Reed and Sue, and that's fine. I mean, it's Fantastic Four First Steps, it's Fantastic Four. I don't think that necessarily means that all four characters have had to have equal screen time, equal character arcs, because I do think Reed and Sue are the most important characters in this film. So Johnny and Ben taking a backseat, and I say backseat, they still have they're still in a majority of the scenes and whatnot, but I think they have interesting things to do at times, but their character arcs are, their characters and personalities, I think, are a little less defined than Reed and Sue. That being said, I was thinking about this on the way back from the theater. I mean, Chris Evans in the first Captain America film, Tom Hiddleston even in the first in the first Thor film. I mean, these are characters that are beloved now, right? And throughout the MCU, they really grew into their own. But at the beginning, I mean, not everyone can be Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark, right? Actors grow into these characters, and by the time you get to Avengers, and by the time you get to Winter Soldier for Chris Evans, and by the time you get to the first Avengers for Tom Hiddleston, you really latch onto these characters. And I think that with time, give it time, Joseph Quinn and Evan Moss-Bachrach will really endear themselves to us as well as an audience. So the cast is phenomenal. The cast is phenomenal. Also, shout out to Julia Garner, who plays Silver Surfer, as we saw in the trailers, and she has a very interesting role to play in the film as well. And I think that she does a good job. Speaking of that, what I love about this film is that every character, like I said, not every character has equal screen time, not every character has an equal amount of a character arc, but every character has purpose in this film. And it feels weird to say, right? It feels weird to say, oh, it's so easy to just write a couple lines of dialogue that explain something for a character. And it's easy to say that, and I know writing for films or books or whatnot, it's not that easy. I understand that. But you look at a film like this that took just a little bit of extra time, maybe throughout the entire runtime of the film, 5 extra minutes to develop a lot of their characters here and there, just in little bits and pieces. Just a couple lines of dialogue, a couple scenes here and there, and all of a sudden, every character in the film feels so rich. We'll talk about Galactus in just a second. But for example, Galactus, right? Because we talked about this in my hopes and predictions segment. Galactus is a really hard character to do. Either you make him just a giant, cloud thing that they did in the original Fantastic Four in 2005, or you make him this kaiju kind of monster, or you just this guy who's running around eating planets. And like that seems kind of silly. They took, I think it was Eric Pearson who wrote this movie. He and Max Shackman took just a couple extra scenes, and all of a sudden, I'm not going to say Galactus is Killmonger. I'm not going to say Galactus is Thanos or blanking on some other villains, or Michael Keaton's Vulture, for example, where you're like, oh wow, they're very complex characters. I mean, Galactus is not like that, but you understand him, and that's something that frankly, that's a cherry on top, because I was sitting there and I was thinking, oh, it just took a couple scenes to really make you go, oh. That's interesting. Same with Silver Surfer, same with all the members of the Fantastic Four and a couple other characters. It just takes a couple extra lines of dialogue and you go, oh, wow, interesting. You're not just black and white characters where you only are only righteous and you're only evil and things like that. There are real things going on here. Speaking of Galactus, this movie is visually astounding. I haven't walked out of a Marvel movie like that ever. This might be the most visually beautiful MCU movie ever put to screen. Almost every shot. So first of all, the set designs and the backdrops in the retro futuristic 1960s world that this film takes place in. For those of you who are catching up from the trailers, this takes place in an alternate universe and this is all in the trailers. This is not a spoiler. It takes place in a sort of retro future 1960s universe of Earth, where the Fantastic Four live in New York and they're hanging out in a kind of a different parallel universe. And all that stuff is great. It just feels like that Tomorrowland kind of vibe, but every shot is so much detail, so rich. The technology feels so unique, and the city feels so lived in, but so different. And I love it. I love it. But then, not only that, there are some shots as well. There are many shots, frankly, as well, where they're going to different locations that are not the main city. Obviously, not going to spoil what they are. They go to different places. They do different things. And you're watching this. There are some sci-fi things in this movie that I'm like, oh, wow. It's just the way that things are framed, the way that Galactus is sometimes framed in camera. Every shot with Galactus is beautiful in a terrifying way. Every time Galactus is on screen, my jaw was on the floor. It was astounding how they were able to do that. And a lot of credit goes here to Matt Shakman. Matt Shakman, like I said, was the director of WandaVision. And he takes those sensibilities of the sitcom kind of vibes of WandaVision, where you have to make the whimsy, and he also takes the emotion of WandaVision and plops it right into this movie. This movie has real emotion. This movie takes its time in certain scenes to make you understand that the characters are grappling with things that are very difficult and very heart-wrenching for these characters to go through. This movie takes time. Honestly, I wish, and we'll talk about this more in the spoiler discussion, I wish there were a couple scenes where I almost was like, oh, can we linger on this a little bit more even? But I'm still glad that they took the time in this movie to have a few scenes like that. And it's just beautiful, some of the things that they were doing. And Matt Shakman, I know it's not just Matt Shakman, it's the set designers, it's also the writers, I think, again, Eric Pearson, I think, and also probably some other writers as well. They deserve all the credit in the world. But Matt Shakman, I couldn't imagine anybody else directing this movie, especially after WandaVision. Not only does he do the retro future really well, and the WandaVision not sitcom kind of vibe, but the whimsy really well and the emotion really well, he also just does the epic really well. This movie has epic scale, and it's not like, I don't use that very often, at least I hope I don't, because it doesn't apply to every single MCU movie. Thunderbolts is not epic. Thunderbolts is gritty, and I like Thunderbolts for that. I really do. Captain America Brave New World is not epic. It's hard to describe that movie. And again, I don't hate Captain America Brave New World. Deadpool and Wolverine is not epic, but it's chaotic and it's fun. This movie has epic scale. Obviously, you have Galactus, and it is just some of the shots in this film are it's just artwork. And I'm thinking about some of the shots in this movie, and I'm so blown away by them. And the story, just to wrap this up, the story. Right? Because really, the characters are great, the visuals are great, but maybe the story isn't good. And I will say, right, the first act, I really enjoyed the first maybe 10 or so minutes, but then the first act kind of gets going, and you're like, okay, this is some setup here. And then they dive into the second act, and I'm like, oh, wow, the film is kind of speeding up really quickly. But then as you go along with the second act, it surprised me. This second act of this movie is perhaps one of my favorite second acts of any Marvel movie, because to me, the second act for movies or stories in general is the hardest one. Because generally people know when they write, they know how to begin a story, they know how to end a story. Sometimes, maybe not always. The middle is the hard part. How do you get from point A to point B? And the middle chunk of this movie is so engrossing, it might even be my favorite part of this movie. And that's not just to take away from the first act, which I think is good. It's solid. But then the second act happens, and the third act is amazing as well. The third act, they surprise you in this movie, because you think you know where they're going in certain places, and then they pull the rug out from under you, and then you think they're going in another direction, and then they do something else, and all of a sudden, the whole time, because I'm somebody who, let's be honest, I've seen way too many movies in my time here on the Access Blockbusters YouTube channel, and at a certain point, you kind of start to pick up on things, right? If you watch that many movies, and you're like, oh yeah, I'm pretty sure that they're going to go here, they're going to go here, and you're right. I was right in certain senses, but in others, the movie really did surprise me. It zigged where I thought it would zag, and it did the inverse. And so, by the time you get to the third act, I was so on board and engaged with this movie. I just couldn't believe it, guys. To wrap up the non-spoiler segment of this review, before we dive into spoilers for a little bit. The Fantastic Four First Steps is, from beginning to end, there is almost no part in this movie that I can think of where I go, yeah, not really a fan of that. Thunderbolts, I talked about Thunderbolts. Really, my big problem with Thunderbolts was the second act. I think the second act was crunched, to be quite honest with you. And even the third act was a little bit crunched. The first act was really long for Thunderbolts, and I liked it. I like Thunderbolts a lot. But, and not to compare things all the time. And not, I don't really want to compare Superman and Fantastic Four that much. I've been staying away from that here. I will mention this, right? And I've been very consistent for me throughout my time on YouTube that James Gunn films to me have a kind of ceiling. It's not just DC versus Marvel. It's not just that I like Marvel over DC all the time. It's not, because if you watch my rankings, you can go check out the 2.5, 3 hour live stream I did in February where we ranked every single Marvel movie and show. The Guardians films just have a ceiling for me, I feel like. And so I like Superman. I like Thunderbolts. I loved this movie. I have not walked out of a movie, because to me, this is, dare I say it, as of right now, again, I might change my mind. Dare I say this is better than Black Panther Wakanda Forever, which I think was a very different kind of love for that movie that felt more just really gut-wrenchingly emotionally resonant for me. I think it's better than Spider-Man No Way Home, which I love Spider-Man No Way Home, but I do think that film, I think, really kicks into gear halfway through. From beginning to end, this movie takes you with the characters, makes you love the characters, takes you on this wild journey that feels so personal. This film is so personal despite a planet-eating god being walking around retro future 1960s, and somehow this movie is one of the most personal and intimate Marvel movies I have ever seen. I loved this movie. I cannot overstate how much I loved this movie. I really did. So guys, that was my non-spoiler review for Fantastic Four First Steps. We will take a few minutes now to dive into spoilers here for the film. So if you have not seen Fantastic Four First Steps, then make sure to just check out, save the segment for later, and we will dive into spoilers. But again, this is your final warning. We will dive into spoilers right about now. So let's talk about, and we'll do. I'm sure probably next week's episode of the Access Blockbusters Pod, we'll do an entire segment about the post-credit scene for, I almost said Avengers Doomsday, for Fantastic Four First Steps. Let's get the second one out of the way. I actually really like the second one in a vacuum. The only reason I was a little annoyed with the second one is the same reason that we're all kind of annoyed with the second post-credit scenes usually for these movies, is that, I mean, obviously, you sat there and you were kind of like, actually, I was so convinced that second post-credit scene was going to be Ewan Gruffydd. Is that how you say his name? Ewan Gruffydd. Because there were so many, I mean, he was at the blue carpet, red carpet premiere of Fantastic Four, and there were some leaks allegedly that he and Pedro Pascal were there at the set party of Fantastic Four First Steps. So I don't know, maybe he's going to show up in Doomsday. That's why I have no idea. But yeah, I was convinced it was going to be him. But no, it's just a little a theme song for the Fantastic Four, which I loved just because of WandaVision. It just felt like WandaVision again, so I love that. But let's talk about the first one. We all knew Doctor Doom was going to show up in the post credit scene. I think that was. I think if you had to bet, I don't bet, but if you had to bet, 95% I would have said. And sure enough, he shows up. Robert Downey Jr. doesn't show up. And I've obviously only seen the movie once, and I only got a quick glimpse at the mask. So I'm sure that when the film comes out, I'm sure even online right now there are leaked photos of the mask, and I did not get a good look at it. We just got to look at him, his back and the cloak. To be honest, I think the scene is fine. I find it odd because I wonder if this is a scene directly from Doomsday, why wouldn't he just turn his face just to show us what his face looks like? Unless that is a major spoiler, unless that's not Robert Downey Jr., in which case, okay, interesting. So maybe that's a spoiler, but then that leads me to believe that this isn't a scene in Avengers Doomsday, and this was just kind of like Thunderbolts, which they said was not necessarily a scene from Avengers Doomsday, but more like a part of the movie, but a precursor to some stuff that happens in the movie. So maybe that's what's going on there. But again, if that's the case, if it's not really a scene in Avengers Doomsday, guy in a cloak, Doctor Doom, we all know. Great, let's move on. So, I mean, I'm not saying that I didn't like the post-credit scene, but I was like, yeah, it kind of makes sense. I guess it's interesting insofar as he wants Franklin Richards for something, because Franklin Richards looks to be one of the most powerful beings in the entire MCU. So we will see where that goes. But yeah, I thought that was interesting. Let's talk about some of the things in the movie. First of all, I liked, so like I said, Reed Richards and Sue Storm got the most to do. Sue, I mean, first of all, being pregnant, okay, I'm jumping all over the place, but let's just sidetrack here. The second act, because speaking of Sue Storm, the birth scene, that entire sequence, right? Because you get the first act, and they explain what's going on with Fantastic Four, and there are these astronauts, and they went to space and cosmic rays and things like that, and that's all great. And that's all fine. And it's fun because it's, you get the origin story, but you also get the fact that they're established and you get it in a fun way. So I liked that. I really did. The second act kicks off. They go to space and I'm like, okay, this film is, it's good. It's really good, really solid. And I'm invested, but kind of humming along. And then they meet Galactus. And then Sue Storm goes into labor. And really that sequence, that extended sequence where they're in space is breathtaking. It is the best parts of Interstellar to me, is what that sequence was. I could not believe how much I loved that sequence. And to me, it shows, right? Vanessa Kirby had to carry to me the most in this movie. And not just that, but her being sort of the speaker, not the speaker, the person who speaks for the group, the leader, really. Because Reed is, I think Reed is the face of the Fantastic Four. I mean, he's always asked to speak at these conferences and whatnot. But I think Reed, Pedro does a really good job of playing that kind of character who is so brilliant, but can be so cold and calculating sometimes, and needs Sue to make him feel, to help him feel. And not to say that, these characters are all brilliant, by the way. I think it's cool that they made Johnny also a very smart character in this movie, because like Johnny's cocky and Johnny is sort of a stereotypical ladies' man, if you will. But I also like that Johnny is really smart in his own right. He's not just a dumb guy. I mean, they kind of played the Chris Evans version as just sort of a hotshot, not the brains of the group, right? But I loved how they were able to portray them. But again, going back to Vanessa Kirby, I think she really carried, the leadership role of this group. And I'm very excited to see her in Avengers Doomsday as well. Again, and I don't have a child, so I don't know what this is, but just based on everything I see, I mean, obviously the mother is the one who gives birth, and there is that immediate emotional connection. And obviously Franklin in this movie is very young, an infant, and so it just makes sense that she's the one who's able to push Galactus back, do that sort of hero sacrifice moment, because it's her child, and of course Reed is the dad, and Reed loves Franklin, but I mean it's Sue and it's Franklin, right? And I just think that was great. Like I said, I think Johnny and Ben, I think Ben in particular, the Thing, I don't know if he got the most to do. I liked Evan Moss-Bacharach in the role. CGI looked pretty good for me, at least believable enough for me, because obviously just the concept of the Thing is sort of ridiculous, but it looked good to me. But yeah, I think Johnny, his whole thing with the language was a fun little subplot that paid off, which I'm glad it did. But honestly, for those two, I think that there are better days in store. Not to say that I hated their characters in this movie. I think that there are better days in store for those characters, and I'm very excited to see what those are. Speaking of, let's talk about Galactus and Shia LaBeouf. And not just Galactus and Shia LaBeouf, by the way, but Mole Man as well. I love how every character has purpose, has a reason for doing what they're doing. Galactus is like, I am sick of this. I am always hungry. I need somebody to supplant me. Shia LaBeouf, that sequence with her giving up her being the Herald of Galactus because she wants to save her world. It just took a couple scenes. Mole Man is kind of a jerk, but he also does the right thing at the end of the movie because he really respects Sue. There's all this stuff. It seems so simple, but it's so well done. And speaking of simple, and speaking of well done, I'll end the spoiler discussion because there are so many things I could talk about. I'm sure that as soon as I finish recording this segment, there are going to be 10 things I wanted to talk about. We'll talk about all those things throughout the next few months because I'm sure we'll be talking about this movie for a while. I'm sure I'm going to see it a couple more times, at least in theaters. I love this movie. I love this movie. But one of the things I said was I so appreciate how Matt Shakman, with the backdrop of Michael Giacchino's score, which I don't know if I talked about too much in the non-spoiler, but the music, the score was incredible. I love the score. It added so much character to this movie. It's so earnest and whimsical, and really what this film is earnest in so many different ways. It doesn't need to be Deadpool. It doesn't need to be that self-aware. It's so earnest, and I love that. But like I said, there are two scenes that stand out to me in terms of emotion, right? What really puts this movie over the edge. They didn't need to do this, right? But they did. First one is the Sue Storm speech, which I was like, okay, really good leader speech, really good hero speech. And then she has a line that I just sat there and I was like, wow. And she says, I will not sacrifice my child for this world, but I will also not sacrifice this world for my child. And that, I sat there and I thought about that line and I said, this is the epitome of what these characters are. They are so good and so righteous is not the right word because I think righteous has the wrong connotations of being almost egotistical, but they're so good and they love their child, obviously, but they love the people of this earth as well. And I think that is going to carry them into whatever happens in Doomsday. I really believe that. The other scene is the scene in the snow. They didn't need to do that scene. They didn't. They could have skipped over it. That scene in the snow where Reed and Sue are talking and they're just looking at Franklin. And it's a minute, but it is proof to me that Matt Shakman understood the assignment. It is emotional. It shows that these characters understand each other, and it shows that they really do love each other and they love their child. And it was a beautiful scene. It was a beautiful, beautiful scene to me. So again, I could talk ad nauseum about this movie. I'm gonna have to shut this segment down because probably this podcast has been running for way too long, and the segment has as well. The segment in itself could be a whole podcast episode, to be frank. So we're gonna shut it down here. But guys, I loved Fantastic Four First Steps. I really, really did. I can't say enough good things about it. This to me has gotten me so excited for Spider-Man Brand New Day because of the fact that this film and Thunderbolts were part of the sort of let's really focus in on the quality. Let's make really good films. I am so excited for Spider-Man. I'm so excited for Doomsday now. I can't wait. Guys, have you seen Fantastic Four First Steps? I'm assuming if you stuck around till the very end, you have with the spoiler discussion. What did you think about it? Do you love this film like I do? And if you don't, that's totally okay. But let me know what you think about it in the comments down below.